So can you hear me? Slyšíte mě?
Yes.
Andrej, můžeme ještě jenom zkusit, jak teda to shared screen, jak to jenom, aby to, jestli to je vidět, jo?
Aničko, tak si to teď naviguj, co potřebuješ.
Jenom jestli je vidět shared screen.
Vidíme tě.
Jo. A teďka sdílím obrazovku.
Second, sorry.
Aha.
Possible that Anna can share her screen in one. Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
but then you have to stop.
Stop. Yeah, okay.
Okay. We just have one more problem with the microphone.
Aničko, a chybí nám tam ten druhý screen, ten obrázek. Ten bez toho textu.
Jo, to jsem tam nedala, na to jsem zapomněla, sorry, já jsem myslela, že to tam dáte, pardon.
Takže share screen je tady.
Hello and welcome at the next panel. We are welcoming our colleagues from Czech Republic. And the first project presented is Prague is not Czech, an artistic project as public service that will be presented by three colleagues and is actually a travel agency that has been presented last year at the Prague Quadriennale. And I welcome here in Národná galeria Andrea Dudkova and Amalie Bulandrova, and Anna Hrtkova will be joining us online.
Okay, welcome. Hello, my name is Amalia, this is Andra, and Anna will join us later, like in her own part, but you can probably see her already now online. So the following presentation aims to uncover the structures of a particular artistic practice sorry, employed during the realization of the project called Prague is not Czech. This project was introduced as a collective exhibition within the Prague Quadriennale of Performance Design and Space in 2019. In short, I will only say PQ next time. And within this frame of this international exhibition, Prague is not Czech represented a travel agency that organized trips to discover authentic Czechness. So here on the other slide, we can see the picture where you can notice how the exposition looked like. So the first and the most visible layer of the entire concept were physical objects, let's say, such as the newsstand. You can see right now the newsstand as such, which was positioned in the left wing of the Trade Fair Palace in Prague. That's in Prague Holešovice. That was the place where the PQ was organized. So that was on an interlocking paving, precisely copying the defined space for each country. That was 5 to 5 meters. And the newsstand was also surrounded by a brick fence. It's not visible right now, but there was also a main seating, which you can see in front of the newsstand. There were also some tuyas, a parasol, etc., those like physical objects. And this installation turned into a temporary bureau of the travel agency, which in the course of 10 days, that was the duration of PQ, arranged together 6 trips outside the metropolis, outside the Prague. And those trips were organized for the international visitors of PQ. And it's also necessary to mention that each trip was prepared individually as an open air event, which was directed, or maybe it's better to say organized, by different subjects, be it students of academies in Czech Republic or of some art groups. And each time, only a very narrow audience group, which consisted of individuals who bought a ticket basically during PQ, were taken to a chosen destination. So, for example, there was a trip organized to Brdy, that's a forest close to Prague, and we can say that the main aim was to pick up mushrooms there. Or there was also a trip to North Bohemian industrial city called Ústí nad Labem, or to an agricultural valley of the river Elbe in southern Bohemia, where the participants were picking up strawberries and preparing some food from them, and so on. So there were really like various trips. And afterwards, those trips were also broadcasted live back to Prague, to this newsstand, through mobile phones, to a television screen. So everyone who was there in this fair palace could also watch the trips like online, let's say. And by using diverse strategies within these particular trips, the whole exposition opened up questions concerning the problems of increasing social and cultural differences within specific geopolitical units, like cultural centralization and gentrification and the unification of urban space, for example. Also, since its very beginning, the project was based on a concept of radical cooperation. So it connected artists, of course, who organized the trips, but also producers and spectators, like the participants of the trips, who altogether were, for example, yes, picking up the mushrooms or strawberries. Mm-hmm. There were also experts on local history or occasional, let's say, professionals in mushroom pickings and so on. Such collaborative approach towards creation in the primary subject that is being reflected within this presentation, and which is itself a product of cooperation of several people, will now be demonstrated in a short manifesto, which was prepared by the initiators of the whole project, that is Andrea and Anna. So now I will give them a word.
With the manifesto. We are a travel agency and an artistic project at the same time. We are searching for the contemporary Czechness, most often through the medium of curated trips. We are a fluid collective that interconnects scenographers, producers, graphic designers, curators, actors, musicians, and theoreticians. In Prague is not Czech. We are turning ourselves into workers of the company, into its officers, guides, location managers, DTP operators, or just dialogue providers. By means of our actions, we are aiming to create a happy universe where the region of our origin or our social status dissolve into shared activity, collective presence, and common being. Prague is the melting pot of Czech and international culture. But as in the most capitals, the gentrification erases specific qualities, as well not so pleasant things, and creates the universalist but exclusive urban environment. Rather than arguing with Prague's position, we focus on places that simply exist. Places where there is nothing, where nothing awaits, and where no one expects us. In such places, we have to make some effort, find our way of having fun, find a willingness to start a dialogue, or just gaze into space for 2 hours.
We are observing while being observed. And the notion of Czechness helps us to understand what is real, local, and important. In our Prague and non-Prague homes, we search for collective consciousness. Besides, and in spite of working across various theater and artistic professions, we co-create events with spectators and locals. The line between the authors and perceivers is thick. We operate inside of it. So this line becomes a specific meta-reality. Within such a field, there are neither divisions nor borders, that would separate the spectator, participant, local, visitor, or Prague and non-Prague. Who gives advices to whom? Who learns from who? Sometimes it's important to fight off the fear of choosing the haircut from the provincial hair salon. On scenography, we are not designers. We refuse to hide ourselves inside the black boxes or white cubes. We do not need to build something that already exists outside of them. We create situations that lives on its own. The set could be a local pub, a strawberry field, socks in open shoes, the Kofola lemonade and fried cheese. Together with its inhabitants, owners or users, they create a complete environment which acts as a vibrant, active agent in one's individual reality.
Yeah, share screen. Yeah. We respect what is around us. We do not have a plot, a text, a scenario. We always prepare just the initial situation. We focus on random circumstances and arbitrariness. We expect diversity of opinions and meetings. Our target group consists of retired people, farmers, provincial officers, Ukrainian cleaning ladies, tuning enthusiasts, home chefs, active hikers, gardeners, kindergarten teachers, ice cream sellers, ice cream eaters, beer lovers, coffee drinkers, vegetarians, as well as meat eaters. We believe that in our universe, everyone could be actor, scenographer, or director without the need to study at universities, long-term term experience, or acquaintances at the right places. We are Prague is not Czech, and we offer you our services.
So now let us only recall that the project Prague is not Czech was originally created as a national exposition for the PQ, and as such, it was also awarded a prize for imagination by the international jury in the student exposition. But the members of the team decided to carry on with the travel agency concept and to transform it into a systematic socio-artistic research, which uses selected strategies of non-Prague reality as a ready-made and fills them with its own content. Since it was originally established for the PQ, it's probably logical to ask what type of scenography this project or this exposition actually embodies. So first of all, it's perhaps important to note that scenography as a term is a term of highly variable nature, the meaning of which was and still is shifted on the basis of the cultural and historical context. So to give just one short, more or less contemporary example, in the Cambridge Introduction to Scenography, which was published in 2009, we can find a characteristic that widens the perception of scenography as manipulation and organization of the performative environment. Also, the American theatrologist Arnold Aronson brought attention to the multidisciplinary concept of scenography by strongly distinguishing the term from a similar notion of stage or set design. And in this particular context, the Prague is not Czech project explosion or this project embodies this very effort to break scenography free from its close connection to the theater stage. And furthermore, it aims to present it as an overall visual, spatial, and auditory organization of any theatric or performative event, potentially encompassing all the senses as well as the dimension of time that allows for a dynamic process of changes which occurs during the event. That would be just, let's say, some theoretical frame for the concept of scenography. For the team of the produced project, each trip is an artistic strategy, let's say, of how to observe and be observed, while not necessarily having to separate those two activities. The members of the team always prepare only the initial situation. For example, picking strawberries, which was the objective of one of the trips, could thus be understood also in terms of a scenery as a lived space. Prague is not Czech thus represents an artistic project which merges scenography with a socially oriented and participative art, artistic expression with lived reality, and individual experience with a collective practice of tourism. And although it was established as one-time exhibition, combining several more or less autonomous artistic subjects, its character as a temporary travel agency enabled to bridge diverse views on both artistic and not artistic views and activities in a specific space. Within the work of the team, the importance of all the components and the diversified structure of relations is essential. It ranging from the initiators of the project through the creative management and organization staff to co-participants like the tourists and the locals. The possibility to use artistic creation to originate unexpected situations and thus instigate encounters of people from different social and cultural strata has led the team not only to choice of adopting a seemingly unusual statement, public service, but also to a change on a personal level. In our approach, it would be the perception of the space that surrounds us. So let me conclude by a statement that tourist, researcher, or participant of the trip who doesn't expect a standard comfort during his or her travels and doesn't require a certain level of readiness of the visited place can open up in such unusual conditions to unexpected encounters and conversations. So that would be the most prominent ideas of the project, and thank you very much for your attention.
So thank you, the collective, Intelekturalna. And the next, I want to welcome Martina Čurdova from Prague, Czech Republic. She will speak about a community art project that took place in 2012 on Czech-German border, and it's actually addressing the Czech-German trans-border experience after the Second World War. So I welcome Martina.
Yes.
So we can start. Is it working? I don't know. Thank you. Okay. So hello everyone. My name is Martina Čurdová, and I work as a theater director and lecturer, and sometimes also performer. Usually when nobody wants to take the role, so then I do it. And as we are a little bit more intimate here, I thought I would tell you a little bit about my background, because this says a lot how and what's my way of working with theater. So I was studying at DAMU, at the Academy of Performing Arts in Prague. And while I was studying, which is like quite a long time ago, the Coolness Dramatics was on a lot. So we were rehearsing performances that were a lot about the form. And usually somebody would have to get naked, and somebody would have to like do something really physical and scream a lot. And it was okay as a kind of theater, and definitely it was interesting, but I felt like that's not my way. That's not what I wanted to do. But I didn't know like which direction was the one I wanted to take. So I felt the theater has like a lot of power, an immense power of transformation. And like in the old Greece, like it wasn't catharsis the only quality of the performance, but also the metanoia. Like you go to theater and you come out, and you come out deeply transformed. Like it's literally change of mind, or change of direction, or change of the way you look at things. So I went to Spain and then to Brazil for internship and for like to study there in Brazil. And I was working in Barcelona with the second and third generation migrant teenagers. And while I was there, two movies about Barcelona came out. And first was Vicky Cristina, like Vicky Cristina Barcelona. Like everyone would like to have their Barcelona, like very cosmopolitan and colorful, and you fall in love with local artists, and everybody plays flamenco. And then it was Beautiful, both were with Bardem. And the Beautiful was about the migrant background in Barcelona, about the people who live like 20 people in one room, and they are hunted around by the Mossos d'Esquadra, which is like the local military police. And I was working with those teenagers in very isolated barrio, very isolated neighborhood. And those were teenagers who were taken out of home because the integration, according to the institutions, wasn't going well. So they put them into a detention center. And since morning till evening, they had like a Catalan cuisine and Catalan language and Catalan theater, and they hated everything Catalan by the time I came. So I was working with them. They were very angry. They had a lot of aggression, and I was really scared of them, because when I was coming, you know, like I was telling to them something, then I would turn around and they would start to like scratch their faces and pull their hair, and they were fighting a lot. So I didn't know how to approach them, how to work with them, and I didn't have any experience of that kind. And we were supposed to do some Catalan authors, like theater authors, and to make a presentation, to make a performance in the end. And while I was approaching them, I felt that if I want them to open up to me, and if I want them to work with me, then I have to make the first step. Then I have to be sincere first. So I told them I was scared of them. I told them I had a lot of fear of them, and they really melted, and they were, why? But we like you so much. And since then, when I started to be sincere and very open with them and share my feelings, things changed a lot for us. And we started to work as a group, and we started to share, and I started to get to know them, because Mina is really a neighborhood like very tough. Even in Southern America, I never saw anything like that afterwards. So I started to work with those kids, and we were discovering what we wanted to present. And I suggested to tell their own stories, because those were kids that were judged and doomed by their families and by the institutions, because they were taking drugs and selling drugs and prostituting themselves and involved in violent crimes many times. So we decided to tell their stories and to work on their stories. And the presentation in the end, it was something that when I think about it until today, it's very moving for me, because I felt it made a great movement in the community for the families and for the institutions that were supposed to take care of them. And I also felt that this is the way I want to work, like to work with people who have no voice, or who maybe think they have no voice, and to share their stories on stage, because this is the way how they can gain the voice. So afterwards I went to Brazil, and I was working with people who had experience with police violence and who lost a member of a family due to police violence. But I was also working with native communities. And for me, there was a great experience and great shift of consciousness also in a way that like art was very present in the community. Art was like integral part of the community in a way that like art was the way they were celebrating their victories, and it was the way also they were grieving their losses. And everybody could sing and everybody could dance, and they were doing theater together and rituals together. And because in my country, and I think it's the thing of whole Western world, like the division line between the viewers and the performers is very, very clear. And it's hard to cross it for many people. Because in Czech, like also the word for artist is umělec, like the one who knows, like you know, umí. Yeah? And divák is the one who views those who know how to do art. And I think this is what really blocks creativity in many people, that you don't feel you are artist good enough to play or to make pictures or to do anything how you want to express creatively. So I got very inspired by that in a way like that they don't even name it. It's very integral. It's within everyone. The creativity is a way how to connect with yourself, with the community, and with something maybe behind or something beyond, even something bigger than you. So when I came back, I got addressed by sociologist Barbara Spalová, who I didn't know at the time, and she teaches at Charles University in Prague, but at the same time she lives in the mountains, in the northern part of Czech Republic, in Lužické hory. And she asked me to direct a Czech-German community transborder project. And this part of Czech Republic, this northern area, has very specific history because there used to live like ethnic German communities that were moving there since 11th century. They were really part of the Czechoslovak or of the Czech crown space. And when the first Czechoslovak Republic was established in 1918, they, I think for a good reason, became nervous and they tried to like separate or at least to gain some autonomy. And the new Czechoslovak government, they reacted by sending an army there to that area and really try to suppress this movement. And then in the 30s, in the 1930s, when the world crisis hit hard, it really hit them hard too, because they were doing a lot of trade with Germany, and Germany was deeply in the crisis. And again, the Czechoslovak government didn't take much care. So when Hitler rise to power, the nationalist movement really spread fast in these areas. And when in 1938, these areas like called Sudetenland, so they were taken away by the Munich Treaty. They were taken away from Czechoslovakia and connected connected to Germany, to the Reich. So a lot of people, a lot of Germans that were living there really welcomed Hitler, but a lot of them were also anti-fascist and a lot of them were neutral and they just wanted the war to be over. So during the war, we were occupied by Nazi Germany. And after the war, as an act of revenge, that was already like decided during the war, all those ethnic Germans, which were like around 3 million people, they had to leave. And in the first phase, it was like a wild transfer. So a lot of atrocities happened, a lot of raping and a lot of killing and thefts. And then in October, it started like organized transfer, organized by the Czechoslovak government. And even the then president, he called it the final solution of the German question in Czechoslovakia. So suddenly those areas that were populated by 3 million productive people were vast and left without population. And hundreds of villages that were just taken away by heavy machinery. And even today, when you came to these areas, you can feel that you cross the border of Sudetenland, because it's kind of certain melancholy and it's everywhere. It's in you walk in the woods and maybe there's a cross and you know that used to be a village, but there's nothing left. So what started after the war was like resettlement and repopulation of these areas. But what it created is really communities that are very separated and communities that are very distrustful. And this Czech-German question, there was a big silence in the communism. Like they were, because like the Germans supposedly were the like enemies, the Western enemies. So if somebody was of German ancestry or that they have like relatives in Germany that had to leave because there were of course Czech-German families, the bilingualism was like common in this area. So they were trying to hide it and like this German past was not discussed at all. And in the 90s, this topic was used by populist governments, like to spread the fear that the Germans would come back and they would want their houses back. So vote for us because we won't let them take the houses and the area and all that. So it was always kind of like palpable issue in the Czech Republic. And only now the Czech-German reconciliation is taking different shape and different direction. And also the generation that was like directly present, either in the occupation or in the transfer. So most of these people are already dead or experience it as very little. They were not like active agents of the things that were happening there. And the new generation is taking over, but of course they are affected by that. I also work a lot with transgenerational trauma transfer, and you can see it, how it rides through the generation. So I was invited into this project and I was thinking this is like a big thing, big step. So Bara was like, she took the initial part, like I would say the promo campaign to invite people from both sides of the border to participate in this project. And for me, my part started when the people were gathered together and I came there and there were about 20 people in the ages between 5. The smallest kid had 5 years old and the oldest participant was German, transferred to Germany. And he was 84, I think, at the time. So what I was thinking is like how I can hold and create a space for those people to share their stories and to create together. What we wanted to find out, and what Bara as a sociologist wanted to find out, is how do people relate to this space and how do they integrate their personal story into the community narrative, which was more or less very different on both sides of the border. And what I was interested in is how creative process can help or how it can support to rebuild and to renew the trans-border Czech-German community, which existed before the war. It was very interconnected. So first what we were doing was just like getting to know each other and games and exercises and getting a bit from the mind and from the words and from the preconcepts I have about Czechs or Germans to the body work and to the emotional work and to see what's behind all these stories and all these concepts that we have about each other, that we are all humans with the same basic needs and emotions. So when we got to know each other a little bit, we tried to search for the story. What's the story that we want to tell? And the group, they didn't want to share their personal stories. So I respected that and we were searching for a story. Like first we were starting just to create mind maps of the space, of the region where we live, because it was 2 interconnected villages just over the border. And we were looking like where maybe we have blank spaces. Like I walk around this space, but I never know what's there. Or where's my favorite space, or what space that holds negative energy for me. So just mapping like what's our common space where we move together. And the space that resonated most and where a lot of energy was coming into was the local cemetery in Jablonné. And there used to be a lot of German graves, and they are still there. But the gravestones, they were used in the 60s to build a dam. So those German gravestones were taken away from the cemetery and they built a dam from them. And so you can see the rectangulars of the German graves, but you could not know whose bodies were buried in the grave, unless you were from the German family. So these gravestones, it seemed like a big topic in Jablonné. And there was also a story of a family, because in the 60s, like after the dam was built, in the 60s, the communist regime in Czechoslovakia relaxed a bit. So some of the Germans started to come back, like to visit their families, if they're a Czech-German family. And some of them brought the gravestones to put them back on the cemetery. And the Czech part of the family, they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to draw the attention. They didn't want to like assign their name back to the German side. They were really scared. They didn't want to like put the gravestones there. So a lot of them had them at home. Well, some of them put them, but most of them didn't. And so we started from this topic of the gravestone that suddenly appeared in the cemetery. And I asked the people to create a character that is coming to the gravestone and relates somehow to it, a character from the village. So they took on the characters, and somehow magically, as it happens in the theater, all the characters fell together and it created a story for us. That people were sharing their stories through the character, but they were protected by the character. So we started to work on that story. I tried to create a space as collaborative and as collective as possible. And it was very conflictive and it was very emotional because everybody was bringing their own interpretation of the story. And sometimes we would discuss a gesture for hour what that means and if it should be there or not. And also the mixture of the people that there were Eastern Germans and Western Germans, there were Czechs, and there were people from Jewish ancestry. So it was like really everybody was represented in the story as it was. So I was trying really just to like bring suggestion and then let people create and be putting the story together. And during the process, we would be getting emails, like threatening emails. I don't even know how people got to know because we didn't make any press conferences. We didn't release anything about it. That people would come and they would tell their truths and they would interrupt the performance. And I see. So I was a bit afraid what would happen on the premiere. But then when the premiere was on and people came for it, and some Germans came for the first time, they crossed the border to see the performance and to come to tell their truth. And they were maybe living just over the border, but they never came back because the pain and the bitterness was so big for them that they couldn't cross the border. But they decided to do it now. So we had a lot of German people, very old German people in the audience. So we were playing the story, and in the end there was a big silence. I was really afraid what would happen, and then people just started to discuss together, like with the people that were sitting around them, and they were really quiet. They were really like respectful. Everybody was super respectful to each other, and they were discussing with the Czechs and Germans with the Germans. And some people went afterwards, the German people, to see their original houses with the new Czech inhabitants. And like we were then creating a discussion together with everybody together, and what was the prevailing emotions was like gratitude, that even took time and energy and put those stories on stage, and they told us it helped them reconcile with what happened because it was also part of their story. And the fact that everybody was represented in the group, like Czechs and Germans and Jewish, it helped them a lot. Like to see it and to come through their own process during the performance and to find a way like how to at least a bit reconcile, like at least to cross the border and maybe go to see their new house and find a way how to deal with things. So after the first project, that was, I would say, a big success, because then like people really got together and they would start little projects on their own over the borders. So another villages and another people asked to do like another projects in that region. So this was in 2012, 2013, the first project. And then the second project happened in 2014, 2015. And some of the group, they were the same. Some people were too old by the time to participate. But some people really already knew each other. They were very much interconnected. Some people came new. So I asked them to bring their stories, like to really bring their stories, their personal stories. And it created a totally new level of understanding and sharing, and also of like empathizing and respecting the other, because suddenly that weird neighbor, that weird old guy wasn't a weird old guy because we knew his story and we could relate more and we could understand more why he maybe is behaving the way he is. So we picked one story, which it was so interesting because it was a bizarre story, but as it showed up, it was a very representative story for the region again, because it was a story of a family who lived in Volhynia. Volhynia used to be, now it's Ukraine. And during like 1860s, 70s, a lot of Czech people moved to Volhynia, to Russia, because Russia was inviting people to settle like down in the vast lands where there was nothing. So there were kind of like a lot of Czech villages in Russia at the time in this Volhynia region. But during the war, the Volhynia became really hot because it was occupied by Germans. It was like attacked by the Ukrainian fascist guerrillas. So there were some villages were burnt out, some of the Czech villages. So this family, they decided to like make a big, I don't know how to say it in English, poistka? Like insurance, yeah, thank you, insurance. Insurance for the house, for their house. They burned the house down, they took the insurance and they moved to Argentina. Because at that time there were agents like trying to catch people to come to Southern America to repopulate the last areas, like to come and live there. So this family moved to Argentina and they promised like, they had leaflets, they promised beautiful new life in this land. But when they came there, there was nothing. They had to dig a hole and live in the hole, and they had to cut the jungle, and they came with their best porcelain and furs and everything. So it was very tough at the time in Argentina. And some people came back, and this family, they stayed, they decided to try to make the agriculture there. And they had 3 sons. And one of the sons, he didn't want to work in the farm, so he was going to Buenos Aires. And at the time, Evita and Juan Perón, they were having the speeches for the people. And also, Czechoslovakia was sending agents to Southern America to bring those people back and to repopulate the German areas because the Germans were transferred away. So one of those agents, he addressed this guy and he told him, well, come on, like what is Juan and Evita Perón talking about here, the socialism and the human rights and the equality? We all have it in Czechoslovakia. The communist regime is on and like everything is there and everything is new and alive and perfect. So he went back and they sent him to his Jablone. And when he saw how it is in the Czechoslovakia, he wanted to go back to Argentina immediately. And they told him, no, you were born in Volhynia, the Soviet Union, you can go there or you stay here. And the borders were closed meanwhile, so he stayed there. And the family was separated. Part of the family was in Argentina and part of the family was in Jablone. And as we started to work on that story, it came out that a lot of families from that area had somebody in Argentina or in Southern America. That it was a story of a lot of families that never spoke about it because it was also a big separation, a big pain for those families. So we created that story, and again, it was a big, big movement for the community, and everybody was coming to us and sharing their story about part of their family there, or in Northern America. Yes, sorry, I forgot about the photos. So you can put the, maybe the slide showed one. It's from the first project, so we will see a bit of the village in Jablona and then immediately the two. So these are photos from the first project, so you can see a bit how it looks like there and how's the local community. And yeah. So that was the second project that we did there, and the third project that we were doing. Because I felt we dived really deep into thick topics, so I wanted to do something more light. And also in this project, there were a lot of kids present. Always in the projects there are kids also present, but in this, it was really a lot this time. So I decided to do like new circus, which was something that, yeah. Yeah, this is from the second project, from the Argentina project. Okay. So the third project that I decided to do was about like family circus, about acrobatics, because we had a lot of kids, and also I wanted to do something more light. So we put together stories of how was the post-war childhood in this area. What were the kids doing? Like we were collecting stories from the local people, what they were doing as when they were kids in the post-war times. So they were telling us stories like they were real wild kids because there were a lot of like abandoned German houses. So they would go there, they would destroy them because they would have a lot of aggression in themselves after the war. Or even some kids died at that time because they would find like some guns or some munition and they would use it. So he said it was really like wild post-war childhood. So we decided to collect those stories and put them together. And this last project was really like, I think, the end of the trilogy, because I think in the first project, it was really like a big transformation for the community. And we dived really deep, and it was very painful. And it was very also healing. It was the biggest impact. That in the second project, it was already a bit lighter, but still we had some new people and people were getting to know each other, and it was a great impact in sharing the personal stories. And then the third project, I think we had a lot of fun, and we somehow like took a deep breath and we could like swim up on the surface again. So that was the last project that I did there, and maybe we could see the third part. And yeah. And afterwards, the community, they decided the projects on their own. So they have their own local director who now works with them because they really got into theater and they really found it as their way of expression. So they do projects on their own. I still sometimes go there and we stayed big friends with the whole community. So this is about the third project that what we were measuring, also not really me, but more Bara, because she's a sociologist, what was the impact of the local community that we were really interested in. And what we got as a feedback, sorry. What we got as a feedback from the local people and how we put it together was like impact mainly on 3 levels. The first level was personal, because for everybody it was a deep transformation. In a way they could tell their story and they could share the story, they could open up. And also they could work with their bodies and with their voices and they could find new way of expressing themselves and expressing their creativity, which they didn't have before. And the second level was the community level, because now when you come to Jablone and the opposite village, it's either Zittau or Lickendorf. So now everybody, every weekend there is something going on. Somebody is teaching yoga, somebody is baking cakes, somebody is doing this, somebody is doing that for the whole community. Like people get really activated. And they understood that if they want the change, they have to be the agents of the change. And also I could see that they gained the confidence that if you can move on stage, and you can make changes on stage, then you can make them also in life. You know, it's somehow like I felt it's somehow kind of even imprinting, you know, like if you can make this here with your body and with your voice, then you can do it also in the reality. And when I see the community now, how it's working, and I'm thinking it's just a small step, but then I also view my work as a stone, like if you throw it in the water and the circles are spreading, you know. And I feel like everybody who's been through this project has already different kind of viewing and perceiving and thinking of things, you know, and that's the way they spread it. So really the community is different and you can see it. And the third level was somehow like, I would say, maybe not really political also in a way it was, because it made a great impact also in the village and in the landscape. Because for the first project, we were searching for a place that we could like put this theater, maybe some interesting site-specific projects. And we discovered that there was a old German dancing hall, old German ballroom in this village, like with crystal, you know, like this crystal chandelier and like beautiful frescoes on the wall, which local people were using for paintball. So we decided to restore this place and to put the theater there. And now they use it as cultural center, and also they use it for the balls again. So there is no more paintball, luckily for me, because it was really like destroyed when we started to work with that. And for the second project, we discovered a church, an old German church that has always been there, but it's something like you walk around and you don't see, something, this blank space, something that is connected to some painful history, so you don't even wish to see. So the church has always been there, but we kind of discovered it. And already when we were rehearsing there, people would be coming because they saw the church open for the first time, and they would be asking us like, what's happening there and why is the church open, and if they could see it inside. And they were spontaneously giving money for the restoration of the church. So we started also a campaign for this restoration, and so we got some Czech-German funding. So nowadays the church is restored again. So actually it made a movement in the community also in the way that suddenly two places that were like hidden, that were unseen, that were living in the shadows, and the stories also that were living in the shadows, are now taken back and used by the community. And people get much emancipated, like suddenly they found a way to like apply for the grant. And suddenly somebody was able to write it, somebody was able to apply, somebody was able to start an NGO. And like really, in a way, they got political because they started to take care of their environment for where they live, and they found a way how to like restore it and how to use it for their own use. So for me, it was like the first project of community documentary theater that I did in the Czech Republic. And still somehow it's a basis for me that I like to come back to, because it's like, when I come there, I can really see the change. So that's really something that was important for me, because also it was, all of them were long-term projects. I was going there every week. It wasn't kind of parachute projects that you come there, you put your art on the people, you want them to change, and then you leave again. It was really like something that we worked hard on. But I felt like we were going down, so that we can go up again. And the reconciliation that happened there, even it was like, some people were from the first generation, but most of the people were already the second generation. But it really helped all the families. It made impact on all the area. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay. So now I invite all the participants of this panel. Are there any questions by any chance at this point already? Gaspar already has the first question.
Is a question for Martina. It is astonishing to hear the grade of change that this project brought to this area. I was wondering, in the presentation you mentioned that these areas and this changing borders and exile of people was also used for political means, in a way, we will protect you, they will come back and so on. What about after 91? Was this still a political issue? And did this change with the changed atmosphere of the whole region? I'm asking because in Slovenia we have an ongoing division between Slovenian partisan movement collaboration that seems to be going on in a vicious circle without end, and perhaps this might be a way to get a reconciliation that we weren't able to get to in the last 30 years.
Thank you for the question. I think it's not an issue anymore. Only our president, who, I don't know, I don't even know how to say it, but he's more like dividing than connecting the society. So our president takes up the issue from time to time. But I think more or less people got really calmed by by the new approach that is happening on the borders, because it's also a way of Prague people, or people from the bigger cities moving there, and they are bringing new energy and they are bringing new roots, I would say. They move there to stay there and to live there. It's also a movement of this gentrification, because it's almost impossible to allow an apartment in Prague. So a lot of people are trying this kind of come back into nature or come back into roots. And they are trying to move into these areas, because actually Czech Republic is also very small, and this area, it already starts 2 hours from Prague. So the atmosphere is really changing. Also, of course, it's bringing some conflicts between the locals and the newcomers, but the newcomers are really starting like new way of projects and new wave of approaches, like rebuilding the houses and creating a small projects like for example, creating alleys of trees, like alleys of remembrance, or a lot of projects of remembrance are appearing in the countryside. Like, we don't want to suppress this, but we don't also want to make it an issue. We just want to commemorate what happened and bring honor to the places and to the people that used to live here and that they had to leave. And there are projects, for example, like there is a tree in the country, like a cut down tree, and there are like nails and a hammer. And when you come there, you can read the story of the people that used to live in this mill, but it was burnt out after the war and the people had to leave. So you can take a nail and a hammer and nail it into the tree as a memory to the people that lived there, you know. And there are being created a lot of such small projects, a lot of very creative projects, just to commemorate and reconcile, but not to like put more oil in the fire. And also, I think the Czech people realize that the Germans are not really up after the houses anymore. Like, they might buy a house now in the like border area, but I never met anyone who would have a German family that really claimed the house back. What they usually wanted is like to come back, maybe to see the house, maybe to say goodbye. Because when we were talking to people like from the German side that had to leave, it was really interesting, like what was the memories for them. Like a lot of people were telling to me, I wasn't like connected to the house. I was connected to the countryside, to the country, and to the, like they were a lot connected to the land, and a lot of them had to leave before they could like put down the crops, for example. So one old lady, she was telling to me, I was growing the whole spring the things, and then I had to leave before I could like took down the apples and before I could do this, you know. So it's not usually the houses they are after. It's more like the places that they didn't have time to say goodbye even, or they had to leave in very violent circumstances, and the trauma is there. They had to leave with their 25 kilos and they were forced to leave. So I think now it's not an issue anymore, and definitely these little projects are helping a lot. It even doesn't have to be theater. It can really be like installations in the country, or these alleys of commemorations, maybe with the names of the people that used to live there. So I think it's really healing, because you can feel the trauma even in the countryside, even in the nature, you know, like when you're sensitive enough, you can feel that's different when you enter this area. But I think it's changing a lot lately. A lot of my friends are already moving in these areas and doing great work. But of course, it has to be respectful and tender towards the locals, I would say, because the locals are a lot what we saw in this Prahanenichesko also, or in the I don't want to generalize at all, but of course, because they have been outrooted a lot, and they got these houses for free, for example, their families, or for one symbolical crown. So they have no roots there. They have they don't see the value, and they are very easily manipulated, like being so close to the border and living in a fear. So also these areas are those who traditionally vote for the far right or for the right. But I think it's really changing, and I see a lot of hope there.
Thank you. Has anybody any other urgent? I also have a question for Intellectualny Rural Collective. I was thinking in between while you were talking about different definitions of theatrical and theatrical, basically. And the notion that you should have awareness that you're witnessing an art project. And you were talking about different audience, one are professional, one are not, and different frameworks. So for example, definitely different audiences in Prague Quadriennale and when stated outside. So what were the differences? How did the audience react differently? And at which point did you let them know how to frame their experience?
Okay, so maybe if you want to answer, or Anna?
All right, so I might try to answer for this. Well, I think it was quite merged, the experience, or the main framework of the, if they like, how did they perceive that they are part of the artistic project? It was, I think, mainly the simple fact that it was framed by this PQ, that it was inside of it. And we as well, when we did planned these trips, we claimed ourselves as we are the students or ex-students of this art school, and we are doing this project. And that's how we, let's say, got involved, the locals, because really we find some friends in these like villages where nothing is there, just coming there and answering those people if they want to participate as tutors or something. So for me, the differences were not really, or I don't know if I'm answering the question, but the differences I didn't really experience, or maybe I was full of like planning and organizing kind of, that I didn't catch if there are some differences in between of this experiencing, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can add from a different point of view, because I participated on those trips from a little different perspective, because girls are really like initiators and designers of the whole project. And then I came more like from outside, let's say, like really in those outside. And as it was mentioned, each trip was organized by different artistic collective. And I experienced one of those, which was taking place in this industrial city called Ústí nad Labem in Czech Republic. And there were participants from, let's say, this artistic community, something like friends of the organizers of the trip. So they were, of course, more energetic, let's say, if it's a proper term. They were more involved from the beginning. And then there were also participants like from Sweden and from Vietnam, really like random participants who came to Prague because of PQ and then decided to participate also in this trip. So it took longer for them to get involved really, but the trip was really organized in the way that everyone during maybe during the day or at latest at the evening, like got a place in this small community. So it was really different approaches. It really depended on the background of each participant, if you know the people there or if you are from a totally different country and so on. But in this case, in my particular experience, it worked. There were really activities which connected people, not really like activities like in the camp, because it was more like situation in the city, but with a guided tour through and so on. But it was, from my point of view, it was really like successful in some term.
Yeah. Well, maybe I would add that there was as well for the like tourists, how do we call them, like those people, there was a whole agenda of like there was an like officially organized meeting behind the train station. Then there was this organized, there was always one organizer, let's say like, I forgot the name, but you know, this it's quite often a lady in a bus who is telling you where to go or what to do and what to watch. So we've got this, and it was quite often a performer who really took the people through the experience or through the trip. He or she pointed out the focus, and yeah. So I think this might as well help to really being involved as a spectator, but as well as a real someone who got in touch with the reality, what was there. We really wanted to avoid this, like some strangers come to a place and have this law how bizarre the place is or strange and then went back. This is something that we really didn't want it to. And that's why I think we planned the trips for like long period. It was all day experience, and it was based on this like really talk with people and being in their gardens, for example, and stuff. So yeah.
Gasper has another question.
Could you say something about how did the locals react? What was their experience of becoming these representatives of Czechness?
What we've been, let's say we've been, to just speak from my perspective, we've been organizers only from one trip. So I will speak only about this strawberry field trip. I don't know how the others was, but the locals from this, like, let's say, as we call them, Czechness representatives, and it was quite surprising, but they've been quite proud to speak about their field, because there was a farmer who've been present, and he was, yeah, he talked about his field as something that really matters. So, and as well, the lady who taught the people how to make the food, the strawberry dumplings, she was as well really like, she was a really funny person at all. And we are still in contact with those people. and they all, to this like international strangers, they really presented it with some proudness, let's say, or something. So yeah.
Thank you. There's time for one short question and then we have a break. Maybe I would ask, just because you were at Prague Regional and you were talking about scenography, how it affects and frames different experiences. Were you by any chance influenced by the Czechoslovakia avant-garde in the 70s? Because they were doing a lot of experiments in the fields.
Like action
Milan
scenography.
Knížek and...
Yeah. Sorry, if it's a question, if I can see some roots of it, or
Yeah, if it was inspired in any case.
Yeah, yeah, maybe Anička and Andra can say if they were inspired, like from their point of view, what were the sources. In my case, I don't see that much in it. I think that for me, again, from someone who tries to make some theoretical frame, or I don't know, think about it from other point of views. For me, there is a really very strong connection with the installation art and with the participatory art, which is more vivid, let's say, in Czech context on the scene of the contemporary art, but not really established in this like scenographic frame, let's say. But it really changes, at least on perspective of PQ. There are huge shifts which could be demonstrated on each, let's say, volume of the PQ. It's also very often connected with the person of the artistic director and how they settled the perspective. For example, in 2007, there was Sordia Lotker who came to be the artistic director, and she really opened the exhibition of scenography also in terms of the performance space. So there were completely new discussions about the scenographic field and the term and what it includes and how can we analyze it. And for example, the perspective of the phenomenology was really strongly highlighted. So I think I see some connection with these shifts, which are connected for me very, very strongly with social care and also with the shifts in the organization of PQ about 2000, let's say.
Thank you very much. So I would close this session because we are running a bit late. So we're having a 15-minute pause and then we come back a couple of minutes after 6. Sorry, 4. Don't run away.
I think it's you, Jure, no?
Hello, so welcome back at the almost last panel. We welcome Marina Palares Elias to UK and Mexico at the same time, almost. She will speak about the Theater of Yes, which is a new methodology she will present us. So please, Marina, the word is yours.
Thank you so much. And it's interesting because now I'm based in Barcelona, where I'm from. Then, you know, I love the wall, let's say it. I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if you can see it well. And here, and do you see well? Yes? Then here, let us start. Okay, thank you so much for this invitation. And my name is Marina, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Theatre of Yes. The basis of Theatre of Yes appears in recent years to show the world the theatre language that I use in multiple international projects, as I say, you know, in UK, Mexico, Barcelona, and other places around the world. It's a methodology that I developed from action in creative framework, working with people in multiple communities. I use this methodology working with people with mental health challenges, learning disabilities, refugees, women, indigenous women. I'm going to tell to you today, you know, LGBT, any kind of people that must their stories to be heard. In 2004, I started working with groups where the social, personal, or cultural contexts were vulnerable. And I started asking this question that maybe you share with me. When I was going to this, you know, to a play, you know, a community play, for example, you know, the actors were people with learning disabilities. And if the quality was not, you know, was not enough, and of course they were made with the best intentions, but the quality was not enough. Me as a spectator, when I was leaving the space, you know, the theater space, I was having these, you know, reflections like, okay, they did the best, you know, poor them, they are not good enough. And instead of breaking my stereotypes and my prejudice around these people, the effect was the opposite one. Then I started asking myself how theater can be an amazing tool, you know, to create an amazing quality piece in order to change this prejudice. How theater, you know, with the language that, you know, I've been doing, I can create a language that I can work with any group that I want, and the final result has this beauty, this quality. And then this is the reason that I created the Theatre of Yes, this exploration of finding the quality of the work, working with communities. The Theatre of Yes brings together the universal characteristics that the human beings have: honesty, beauty, simplicity, humility, and generosity. The Theatre of Yes provides spaces to connect with the world, to humanize, to say no, to say no. The Theatre of Yes opens, expands, cleans, yells, claims, and reconnects. Let's move. The Theatre of Yes is a collective process of transformation of individual and a group. It's the creative journey that participants take, connecting with emotions, with their own traumas, and with their own stories. With the Theatre of Yes, over the years, I realized the importance of being seen before the public. Here means to change the rules of the game. People without visualization within society, marked in the social dominance, feeling guilty of so many stories, where now they go on the stage to tell, to express, and those who normally decide the laws from this society, we sit and listen. And I'm going to tell you the different characteristics of theater of yes, of, of how we can create this quality performance, working with people. They are not actors, but they have so many stories that, they're important that we hear. First is the theater of yes as a weapon to say no. Many times the participants who attend have the characteristic that is no is impregnated in all the shapes. No, I'm not enough. I cannot do that. I need so many things. I'm not going to do anything in this life. We will use the yes as a political act to be free to say no, to be able to create the spaces of freedom where the acceptance is the main thing. The yes as means doesn't not depend. The yes to discover new path never undertaken. The yes to accept other bodies, other emotions. The yes to say no to oppressions, discriminations. The second one is the beauty as the axis of change. Beauty is one of the most important axes of this theater. Beauty is a weapon to open and close wounds, to find justice in such pain, to name submerged emotion. It helps us to break patriarchal patterns, to see alternative that you are going away from boring morality. There is no dialogue with the public without this effective honesty. The theater we propose is a theater with artifacts, without mask, a theater of empowerment and self-acceptance. It's a theater of acceptance of difference and of all the empowerment of those who are excluded because they have not been able to adapt in this society that only values the economic winner. Without beauty, there is no work. There is no possible narrative. Beauty supports our stories of horror and hope. It helps us digest what has never been said, to expose what has sometimes been secretly lived. We see beautiful what others see disgusting. Trauma as beautiful element, the process of recognizing others, of seeing others as an opportunity. Beauty helps us to understand the world more, the process where they lead people to commit acts difficult to find answers, such as suicide attempts, psychotic attacks, abandonment. Meli, one of my participants in Mexico, told her story one day. She had not been able to meet his grandparents that live in another country because her father always prevented her. She insisted on seeing them, of knowing them. The grandparents live in another country and she could not go to see them alone. The young woman dreamed of meeting them, but her father, for fear that she knew his own turbulent past, did not want her to know them and always made up excuses. One day, someone told her that grandparents had died without her knowing them. She felt devastated with a fury against her father. How to face a story of this kind, showing all these terrible feelings? When creating the story, every emotion that she shared, we gave her a movement. The group was fundamental in this emotional movement. The group entered Meli, making equal movements or the opposite. For example, a movement of pain that she goes to the floor, covering her body. The rest of the group covers her body, saying, Meli, you are not alone. Meli, you are not alone. Meli, you are not alone. The peace helped her to dimension her story, unlocking judging us about distant stories. Beauty enables us to have the time to understand the causes of what events and their consequences. Beauty connects us with true emotion. It helps us to digest the horror, the trauma, to accept, to move forward, to adapt, to feel more secure. Beauty helps us to see in another way, to see the insight of trauma, to explore emotion, to find the reason for so many questions, to eliminate established stigmas. The third one is, as I said, the theatrical results in terms of excellence. We can only break prejudice and stereotype if we reach the emotion of the spectators. That is why you must know, and we must know, how to do a quality work without hesitations. This brings us from micro situations to the macro situation that often overwhelm us, so that we feel powerless to respond. It is about understanding from many points of view how emotions take on the role of guides. Therefore, the actors from the stories become the catalysts from collective empowerment by approaching and collecting. We are no longer alone, isolated in our own faults. We are an unified group. We need the theater of years to search for the quality, the beauty of their bodies, their own stories, so these people show themselves as they are. It's time to go further, to accept ourselves, to love each other, to see how wonderful we are. The fourth one is the physical theater. Use the Lecoq methodology. The magic of physical theater is that we create completely new worlds in which we can express our emotion and the story simply using the taxation of our bodies in movement and voice. We don't need anything, only the group and our bodies. In the theater, yeah, we don't, use big props. We only use the bodies and the group. The another one is personal stories. In these stories, you can find dreams of change or find that the story develops those change that happen to a person. In this methodology, the change is the honesty, generosity, and humility of the stories and the collective catharsis it generates between actors and spectators. When you see us, look at us, and then connect. This will be the rebellion, a committed theater, seeing alternative and empowering protagonists to refuse to reproduce the non-established by a culture that benefits itself, leaving those who are not interested aside. This alternative I create from understanding our own narrative and unleashing the spaces of victimization or guilt that many people have in their life. The last one, the last characteristic, but one of the most important one is the Greek choir as a collective force. The choir is one of the main engines of my work. The theatrical form, so beautiful and inclusive, it allows the trip of many axes, from the depths of the bowels, through repressed emotions, going up the actions taken in the words spoken. The choir goes straight to the repressed emotion, bluntly, without possible excuses. It makes a possible new communication between the participants and the spectators. And these are the reasons, the 4 reasons to give Greek choir importance in this process. The first one is express without the action and voice the deepest emotions that the character's feeling. We imagine a character, for example, Sarah, that she wants to leave her partner because she is receiving abusive, behavior every day. But her partner, is telling her in this oppressive context, no, don't leave me. Where are you going to go? You don't have anything. And the chorus, behind her start to tell her, the chorus represents these dreams that Sarah has that maybe she's not expressing in front of her partner, but she has inside. And maybe, from outside, we see her as the dead person, but inside her is still alive. The most important in this, language is what happened inside, because it's the action that we can take to change the outside. Another one is amplify the emotions of the character. It's not the same to say go alone, me as a character, to have a choir, a Greek choir behind me. And then imagine a brother that he shared a secret to his other brother, and the brother has realized the betrayal of other brother. He told him this secret, and he has told everyone. The brother is disappointed with the other and says, "Go." If you say it alone, it will not be realistic and possible flat. Imagine instead that this character has a chorus behind and everyone repeats together, "Go away" 3 times, "Go away, go away," and making at the same time an unusual movement. The result is amplifying this goal and helps the viewer to connect more deeply with this intention. Another role supports character full of pain. Working with personal stories, very sensitive and delicate work. Many times the participants want to talk about personal stories, but the process of doing is so very painful. Yeli, a woman from my Mexico Indigenous Women Project, wanted to talk about her family and how her family pushed her to study law because her mother, her uncle, and her brother were. She really wanted to study theater, but she ended up working as a lawyer, and the sexist abuse that she received from her boss without being able to change that. In the end, she explained how she had rebelled of all of that. I propose a chorus that will mean the other Yelis, the other self, that they took care of her in the process, that she opened her eyes with a lot of love, with a lot of delicate, and they suffer with her. Therefore, in this process of reviewing and putting this Yali story alive, she will not feel helpless. All the Yalis of the woman, all of us were Yali. That intense pain is no longer a single person, it's shared with the collective. And the last one, and reveal. One of these, we are useful and necessary. All actors in a classical theater, the ones who does it best stands out, and those who do not have so much talent are elected. One of the contrary, in the theater of years, there is no such concept of talented connect with the ego. It is not value who knows more or less. In this methodology, the drive is the quality of the work, which is independent of the quality that the dominant culture impose on us. All people can reach it. All of us, we can make theater. Let's see. Everything is possible. Sorry for that. Everything is possible, and everything has a meaning. An idea can develop a story. In this methodology, there is not most important, much less. We are not looking for the most incredible story. Normally, in normal theater, we don't have idea, we don't even know how to start. And these people, because they don't have a space to find those ideas, they feel like passive being feeling that the only function is to follow those who have those bright ideas where power is manifested. How will I have an idea if I'm not enough? If I know nothing? Also, to highlight, we look for the most incredible story. We do it more from a mental point of view, from a narrative logic. We go to the final result, and that calls us and takes away from freedom. Humility, generosity, and honesty as an engine of change. These three characteristics define a position of rebellion against cultural and social stance. It is a theater base of group quality, where the qualities and characteristics of each one is at the service of the group and stories. The generosity. It's an anti-ego theater. My generosity helps the story progress. My creativity, my body, my stories, my emotions are the service of the group. The whole is the result of my generosity of all participants. As participants enter the process, they open up physically, emotionally, and verbally, accompanying the overtures of others. Honesty. The theater that we propose is not a theater of pretending an emotion, of making people see. It's a theater of showing deep emotions. The proposed language has to show the insights of the stories. With a level of the honesty, the stories do not pass to the public, and therefore we don't have to the expected result. There is no dialogue with the public without this effective honesty, without the acceptance of oneself, without being the present in soul, body, and heart, and the humility. The theater of yes is not a space that generates acting skill. That is, quality does not come from the acting skills of the participants that had developing. Humility starts from the acceptance of oneself. That is how I am, with all my travel experience that push me. Sometimes they imprison me, and sometimes they are cornered me. I'm here. I'm here. Humility helps us to see each other, to get us out from the mask. As I say, I had the experience of working in Mexico with indigenous community. And as I realized, women have a few spaces to share support and feel the whole suffering. From the first day, I observed the need between them to touch each other. Nobody had touched my face in this way since my daughter got older. To intervene moments together in creative and emotional space. I had never had a quality listening space. The first day, I proposed this exercise to make and imagine using everybody's body, create an object that they could not live without. One of the women proposed ancestors, those women who have transmitted so much to us. If the way she proposed, pain was seen, loneliness. In each of them, I asked them, what do you want? I want to be feel free. I want to feel safe. I want to be around me to be safe. I want to be happy. I want to get where I propose without obstacles. During those days, we shared through the technique of theater of yes, the size, guilt, intention. The next level was the creation. And the topic was the release of guilt, a topic that suggests without determining that is deep but does not drag us into an imaginary prison. The group was supported a space where we immerse ourselves in search for simplicity and beauty. The group supports, but not from the speech. Support from the creation, from the connection to each other, from the body, from the movement. My function with them is join the creation, that is the stories inspired with their own stories, using the poetic of physical theater. I help them to clean the movement, to amplify the emotion from the Greek choir, to understand the motivation of the characters. I ask why the different choices. I dissect where they want to go. Conclusion. At the end of the project, the work was presented at the Theater House of Oaxaca, Mexico, and the Locomotora Forum. The woman, the frustration of feeling violence from just because they were female and how lead to suicide. The work took the reason from losing hope, being united, cuddling together towards a more healing space. Solidarity among women was one of the points reflected. The piece told personal story about family pressure, not to follow your dreams, ending in a job that you hate within being able to live. Also, to deal with persecution without police doing any physical abuse against them. The work ended on the power and examples of help among women. After this experience in Mexico, I noticed not only that this methodology could be implemented in this group, but also the need of this group to express their own stories based on theater creation. Also, the desire to show in front of the public from another perspective that is normally shown in today's society. The journey of emotion in their own body created, and the honesty that they had never seen, the desire and the need to express personal stories created, and the extraordinary climate in front of female spectators, and many of them men. At the end of each work, a colloquium is made. The men did not share any comments. Only a blind man who understood the discrimination shared the power of the word lived in his own story. The women shared how they felt deeply connected with the stories of share. Participants to see the stories are heard, interpreted, expressed, live, giving meaning to their own experiences. They understand what they live, change their life, transform them. They accept the experience as a springboard to the new ones. His story and people go together. Therefore, the acceptance that something happened to me helps me to accept myself, claim who I am, what I want to wear, and what I want to go. Thank you so much.
Our last speaker, Caspar Nieuwenhuis from Theatre Academy of the University of Arts in Utrecht. Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. So Caspar Nieuwenhuis will talk firstly about the change in Dutch cultural sector, mostly referring to the changes in cultural policy, and to his paper, You Must Change Your Art, and proposing somehow daring question, who should make the change, whether should that be the artist or the policy makers. So please.
Thank you very much. Helaas, I couldn't join you all in Ljubljana since COVID started its second wave here in the Netherlands. And that's why we're talking through a screen. And it's been said, I think it was Albert Mehrabian, a sociologist, that 55% of all of our emotional communication goes through the body language, and then 38% through the voice, and only 7% through the words. So the thing is, I can talk now, but you would only understand 7% of it. So I don't know if that's possible, but if it's possible to see you at least, and to get rid of the masks, then I see your faces and we could have a conversation. But I don't know if that's possible. I see someone is liberated. Can I hear you as well? Then, because then we can have a conversation. You know, it's talking about change.
Hello.
Hello, thank you. Talking about change to me is being intimate with each other, and I will explain what I mean with intimacy. But let me first start to introduce myself a bit. It's been 2 years. No, it's been 4 years that I wrote this article, You Must Change Your Art, and based on this article, I was asked for this job, being an executive director of the theater department of the University of the Arts in Utrecht, which is in the center of the Netherlands. They read my article and they thought, well, if he's talking and writing about change, he certainly will do so. So they asked me to change the whole curriculum, the organization, the financial systematics, and actually to create a systemic change within the university, within the let's say the institutional walls. What does it mean, a systemic change? If I read Manuel Castells well enough, there are 3 modes that we should change. The first mode is the mode of production. The second is mode of experience. And the third mode is the mode of power. So in order to get change, we should systemically change these 3 modes: the mode of production, the mode of experience, and the mode of power. I hear someone whining, or what is it? No? Okay. So this was what I had in mind when I started 2 years ago, trying to change the institutionalized department of theater here at the university. And first of all, I just listened to the people. I tried to make contact to the people that worked here, that taught here, that organized the whole theater educational schedule. And I just wanted to get to know them. In order to change, I believe you have to be intimate with each other. So you have to connect, you have to get in touch, you have to understand what an institution is before before you're able to change it. because I don't believe in defying the system. I believe in adopting the system and then change it from the inside out. So this is basically what I did to try to change it from the inside out. And where do you start then? To me, it was clear that I had to start with the people that worked, that actually are the system, because the system is no abstractum. The system is the people. We are the system. So I joined the system. I joined the people that worked in the institution, and I blended into the institution. I got institutionalized, and I didn't expect that, let's say 5 years ago, of myself. I couldn't believe that I got institutionalized, and here I am, more institutionalized than I am, can't be. But for a reason, and the reason was to get the systemic change I was asked to create. Let's use that word. So what I did first year was to have a conversation with the students, to have a conversation, all kinds of conversations with the teachers, all kinds of conversations with the producers, with the technicians, with the guys at the reception desk, with everyone. And after a year, I knew everything from everyone, not only the professional things, but also the personal things. Why is this important? Because it's layered. We are layered human beings, and everyone that is in a professional setting, everyone that works, has also a personal life, and that matters. The way people react has something to do with the way they live their lives, professionally, but also personally. So I got in touch with the people after a year. I blended in. I was part of the team I was ahead of. And then I started to work and present my plan, because in the meantime, I designed the whole curriculum structure. I designed a new organizational structure, and I designed a new financial structure. And I presented the plan, and I said, okay, this is what we're going to do within 5 years. So in 2025, we'll have these structures up and running. And I based these structures and the change of these structures on the 3 modes of Castas: the mode of production, the mode of experience, the mode of power. The first thing I did was to change the mode of power in a way that it's that I'm not a head, a top-down manager. I'm one of the team. And of course, I'm responsible for the decisions, but I'm only doing this in cooperation with the team. So there you have it. I changed the mode of power in the way I communicated and made decisions. The mode of production and experience that I took from the students and the teachers, how they started to think ahead into the future. What does it mean to use technology more and more in a theater, in the live arts that theater is? Maybe you don't know it, but I can clearly say that the University of Arts in Utrecht, one of the main assets of our programs is that it's technology based. Also for the performing arts, music, theater, and so on. It's technology based. There's a lot of, just a second, I'll change to gallery mode. There's a lot of knowledge about technology, about the way we use all kinds of apparatus, technical apparatus, in order to create art, but also to experience art. And there I started to change the program. I brought in more and more technology, more and more apparatus, in order to change the ideas of students, but also the modes of working, the modes of education, the modes of coaching, the modes of experiencing. After 2 years now that I've been doing this, the real change happened. and not because of me, not because of my plans, and not because of my strategies. The real change happened when COVID hit in. The real change happened in the undercurrents. It happened in the way people started to communicate, started to get in touch with each other, having a screen in between them through laptops, through a platform like Zoom or MS Teams or YouTube or whatsoever. And I know it was already there. In Europe, we already had conversations and meetings on Zoom, but for the first time, it was all around, and we did nothing more than just being on Zoom. And then something emerged. Something emerged from COVID, and that is that finally we had we saw the lack of intimacy. Finally, we felt the lack of intimacy. Finally, we felt the lack of contact. Why? Because it was so manifest. It was manifest in the way we communicate now. It is manifest in the way we communicate now. I speak to you, and I try to get in touch with you, have a contact with you, but I can't because there is a screen in between. So the lack of intimacy suddenly was totally clear. And it was also totally clear to me that this was the actual engine for change. Making contacts and redefine intimacy. Trying to find new ways to get in touch with your audiences, trying to find new ways to get in touch with your peers, trying to find new ways and modes to get in touch with society and all kinds of communities. This is what happens at the moment. So the students here within the university, they changed their perspectives on the theater in the whole. They now see there was a lack of intimacy, there was a lack of interest, and we need to rebuild the interest in communities, in society. We need to change the modes of power. We need to change the modes of productions and experience. So, and for that, we need a redefinition of intimacy. So I would plead, let's get intimate immediately, open up the discussion, open up our microphones and videos, and have a conversation on this plea.
Now I would really, you hear me?
Yeah, now I hear.
Like to invite everybody to join us for a final discussion, and I would like to invite Alma Selimovic to join me because she will be leading us through this last panel. But before, yes, if there are any questions for the last two panelists, one is urgent. Gasper?
Just a reaction on Gaspar's plea for intimacy. It is a kind of paradox. So, of course, we all feel this lack of intimacy and we are urged to do something that things change. But with the screen in between, I can't even smash the screen, then I won't see you anymore. So it is a hard question. I don't know whether you have an answer or your students, but it will be it will be really interesting to hear if you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, what I learned through the last, let's say, it's already 8 months, no, from March on, is that first of all, we resisted and we used force. We started to work as hard as we could, and we started to actually do the same thing, run the same program, but then online. So we used the hard force. And I don't know, there was a switch somewhere just before summer when I got so tired. Same with my team, we got so tired that we let it go. We thought, okay, now we don't know, you know, something is bigger than, speaking about humility, something is larger than we are. Something is larger than we are as human beings. Just let it go. And then the soft force came in. And I thought just before summer, well, this is a good mode of or a good energy to work with. And so after summer, because I was still that tired, I started in this soft mode, and I started in this mode of, okay, let's not push, but let's just adopt or adapt to it. Let's just, like it, you know, the judo sport, judo. It's not a, it's a fighting sport, but it's not about attacking someone, but it's about adopting the attack of someone else, and try to change, due to the try to change with the pace and the force that somebody gives you. So you take the force over, and then you use it and bring it into change. And this practice I'm using at the moment. For example, if there is a systemic, all kinds of policy issues, if there is a policy being made of setup now, I approach it differently than before the summer, before COVID. Before COVID, I tried to resist it. I tried to fight it. And now I think, let's get into the policy. And if it's, I have to understand the policy totally, and then I can change it gradually. But in order to change it, in order to understand it, I have to adapt to it. I have to adopt it. And then I can gradually try to change it and to manipulate it even. Is it enough answer to the question, or is it?
No, yeah, it's very interesting one, yeah. But I might still be on the other side of the tough one. Well, I think that if we really adopt to the policy that is sort of imposed on us, and this policy is complete distancing using technology, then I'm not sure how, in the end, we will manage to create the real intimacy. And I think that theater, especially, is an art form that is sort of completely dependent on this fact that it is live. And what happened here at the symposium as a symptom of this is that we started yesterday, and we had a relatively full hall, as it is possible in these circumstances. However, during the symposium yesterday, the government implemented a new directive, cutting us down to 10 people, which meant that today, I speak for myself, but I think we share the same feeling. We basically have the feeling that the intimacy that we shared the first day is now much weaker. So it is actually happening, and I'm afraid that sort of going in this soft approach of sort of adapting to the absurd situation we live in is a strange way. But I don't have the answer as well. So.
No, I don't have the answer, and I totally agree on what you say about the liveness of theater. You know, the online theater is not a substitute, could never be a substitute for the liveness, the live experience. So if we here in the Netherlands, we are speaking about blended a lot, which means to a lot of people online. And I keep saying, well, it's not online, it's blended. You know, it's a mixture between the live and the online situation or virtual situation, and it should always be a mixture. Otherwise, it will be no theater. So that's I think we agree on this. The other thing about the softness, the thing is, I still believe that. No, there was something more about what you say. I still believe in the soft force as many. You know, if we are with many, either it's the hard or the soft force, but either if we are with many, then we are a force. Then we can create a force. And if we do it a soft way, then we. What I see is that my way of strategy, my strategy to change the structure here, the structures here within the university was, I think, the good way, because it was a soft way to, and the starting point was to get to know the people first. And if you know the people and their wanting and their ambitions and their visions, if you understand that, if you can connect to that, and then you know with how many you can be. And if you know with how many you are, then you know that your force could not only be soft, but also very effective.
Yeah, you go. So I always like to use the phrase, thank you for joining us in such big numbers. So I will also use it today. Everybody for joining us today. My name is Alma, not a big background of me, but I work in Bunker, and my main preoccupation is I'm a producer. So this is probably a sort of different take on things that many of the presenters yesterday and today. Firstly, I want to congratulate Gley on the 50th anniversary. I would sing happy birthday, but it's not really, it's not occasion for my singing skills. But I congratulate you for persevering, and I also thank everybody from the team to make this, not just from Gley, but also partner organizations for making this symposium a somewhat human experience despite everything. So I recently saw a very cute meme on Facebook, and it says that Zoom talks are like psychic seances. So they're like, are you there? I don't see you. Show your face. So it's like talking to the ghosts all the time. And in many cases, I can, kind of understand the idea of having a psychic seance when you have a black screen and you're like, somebody listening. Okay. So this is a wrap-up session and a closing discussion. And since it's called collective works, I'm hoping also for a collective joint effort of everybody that persevered to the end. I was unable to produce sort of a final conclusion or a final thought because I was in the middle of it, and it's just minutes ago it stopped. And also it's kind of, I feel unable to produce some really common denominator to everything, because all the lectures and presentations were great, but I even think we had so many kind of takes on what is collective, what is community, how we approach it. Some discussed artistic collectives, some discussed very ephemeral collectives that are produced through kind of breaking the lines between the artists and audience. some collectives that emerged through a specific artwork, some collectives of non-professionals created for specific performances. Also, we discussed communities that have evolved into more collective amalgams because of some artistic intervention or a process, better to say. We also heard the term of collectives that extend from artists to recipients, collectives as total joint experience, as sort of a pledge for future collective. And we've also had sort of historic views, which is logical because we're looking at least 50 years into the history. If we take Gley, and even more when we were hearing about some examples of collectives, also some glimpses into the future. And we heard a lot about the state of things today and about staying in the now. So I'm unable to kind of give you a final bow on the conclusion. Probably that will come in the publication by all the authors that will write their final pieces. But I still want to offer some re-emerging topics that seemed, at least to me, to be reappearing and propose them for discussion. Another thing that marks my kind of entry into the theme is that 2 weeks ago, I was at a symposium that marked another anniversary. Sorry, Gley, it was a bigger one than yours. It was 100 years of Masca Journal and the 200th issue of Masca Journal. And the theme of the symposium, their main topic was self-governance. And in many ways, the two themes correlate, the collective work, the collectives, and the self-governance. So maybe we can also talk about why it resonates, that collectives seem to be mostly practicing some sort of self-governing, and they have many common points. So these are a few points for debate. And if the debate does not take off, this leaves you with my doubts and questions. So the three talking points are, the first one is, the collectives always seem to be tied to some very specific notions of temporality. In a sense that they have limited time, or that it is very kind of important how long they lasted, or what was their time span, or in which time context they appeared or disappeared. Also in a sense that some are very ephemeral and some systematically search for ways to become sustainable, or more kind of find ways for sustainability of the collective itself, or of the certain ways or methods, or I don't know, also art products that are developed within. Also, in a sense, we heard that many times that for a collective to exist, members of collective have to devote or take time. Time is essential for the existence of collective. It does not exist in the point of history, but in the span of history. Or as Branko Jordan quoted Karolina Babic, so state of mind of the collective only exists when it is practiced. So it does not exist outside of it. So as long as it is during, as long as it is happening, the collective exists. Also that for being a collective, a certain tuning is needed. So decision making takes more time. So all the processes in a collective, not always, but sometimes take more time. They kind of, have to make time to function at all. Also, Alia Lovnik was speaking about temporality in Gley's activities that would offer a glimpse, short opportunity with Miniaturka, or like stretches of time into a residency that is long in Gley. And we also have heard from many authors that the focus in a collective is on the present, on the now. So it's not basically really opposing what was, but focusing on what we are doing now. There is also a beautiful quote, which I will requote. Alia quoted a moment from Gley history, where Matjaž Zupancic, I think it was at 20th anniversary, said Gley never had a future, and that was its advantage. He always had only present. Well, I don't think Gley is a he, but okay, Gley always had only the present.
If he used it intensively, he created the future on an ongoing basis on the same anniversary. Zvone writes that he does not even imagine theater as a lasting thing. Well, I do, but I agree with this notion of Glay being a sort of lasting ephemeral thing. And I think it's also true for many NGOs or many non-institutional theaters, that even though they have a really kind of long span of history, they can stop existing anytime. Also, like the notion of temporality is many times mentioned by many artists that work with communities or create collectives and have an ambition of creating something collective. And they always testify that what is the most needed time is being together on a longer span of time. So every time you want to make an impact or bring people together and hope for them to stay together or form some sort of community, you have to learn how to make time for it. So the time itself works for you. And of course, needing time is always true for theater. It takes time and space, but you know, this is a totally another story. So my first kind of challenge for the talk is the notions of temporality in collectives. And the second one is a bit different, but it includes the word tempore or temporality, because collectives and also some self-governing principles, you know, from another symposium, also reminded me of the concept of temporary autonomous zones. I think it was also explicitly mentioned 2 times. So, of course, the term derives from the anarchist philosophy and offer a great view of collectives. So temporary autonomous zones are spaces where sort of the system is not necessarily directly confronted, but sort of disregarded, bypassed. And since there is no clash or no big division or no like explicit confrontation, this is some sort of under the radar functioning, or maybe under the radar is not the right term, because a lot of times these small actions are actually really noticed. But they offer sort of freedom to avoid many things that are necessarily, you know, kind of when you oppose the whole system totally. By the way, one of the practices of temporary autonomous zones, when they try to go from, you know, kind of political thinking to political strategizing, explicitly talk about focusing on the now. So to sort of escape the oppressive system, you not only, you do not confront it, but you focus on how you can avoid it actually, how you can restructure your mind from the oppressive concepts and just work on the things in the now. And I think this kind of concept is not very new, but I think it's a great starting point for understanding some of the political implications of the collective. I can maybe mention a beautiful lecture by Svetlana Slapshak she had in Maribor, which is called Escapism, Evacuationism, so if you evacuate yourself, microcommunism or monasteries, islands, forests, all escapes from the revolution. And she spoke basically about the different communities that are half closed, some are totally closed, like some of the monasteries or some of the communes that made space actually for their internal revolutions or their own kind of system that coexisted with the kind of hegemonic system or the, you know, the oppressive system or the overall system. Just to hear how the temporary autonomous zone, just to hear the words, how it resonates with what we were hearing for 2 days. I will read you the titles of the chapters from the book that was written by Hakim Bey. Hakim Bey, he's a writer and a poet, and he wrote the book Temporary Autonomous Zones. Not that he invented the concept, but so I will just read you the titles. It's called Pirate Utopias, Waiting for the Revolution, The Psychotopology of Everyday Life, The Net and the Web, Music as an Organizational Principle, The Will to Power as Disappearance, Rat Hole in the Babylon of Information. So I think it's a very beautiful kind of word web to correlate to the thinking about collectives. And the third point I offer for discussion is even if we're in very now and if we're thinking about 50 years back, some sort of possibilities for future. Again, in sort of similarity with thinking about the self-governance, a concept that had its practical kind of implementation that totally failed, and now it's being rethought about, you know, what are the practical implications for a political future. So are collectives sort of spaces that are able to bend time and create temporary autonomous zones and also create alternative ways of being together, working together, making decisions together? Are all these kind of things that people learn, develop, do in any sort transferable to another level? So is it possible to sort of take principles of collectives to something bigger? Here I would like to point to Roberto Frattini's lecture, Liturgies of Impatience, a very beautiful title. And I think he's not the only one. I think a lot of the artists that deal with participatory practices in performing arts deal with this question. So is participating in an artwork or in a collective a learning ground to learn how to be active, to learn new ways of political strategizing, of doing tactics, so of learning emancipation, participation in the public realm? Or is it a playground where we kind of leave the idea of participating and the public actions and are then absolved of this kind of duty to do it because we already did it in some sort of smaller arena, so we're kind of had this catharsis of we did our thing, so we don't have to go, you know, to bigger fights. So one of the future glimpses is that collectives can also function as sort of bubbles. I think we also heard this word, but this word in the current arena reminds me of something else, and I'm not saying this with a lot of humor. The last time I heard it is in the NBA championship. So that's how they are functioning now. They work in bubbles. So maybe communities are a perfect working mode for the COVID times, you know, when you will have to find your kind of tribe of people and stick with them and do not be bothered by the outside a lot, because you will have to, you know, sort of, as the NBA invented, be able to work in smaller communities. And this also brings to a point that I think Kaspar was trying to induce us in. He was talking about intimacy, but I think it's purely subversive in times to have a collective where we're not allowed to be together. So in times of now, it seems that, you know, when we had a kind of mention of only monodramas or, you know, only people working at home, not working collectively, that having a collective is a, you know, subversive idea in itself. So if the last speaker said, let's be intimate, you know, I just say, maybe let's make a collective. And I sort of leave you with that.
Thank you. Anybody here? No? I find it quite provocative that you asked whether it was possible to transfer the collective, the small collective experience onto something larger. Or whether it was just escapism, a bubble. I find it's very tiring. My own personal delay experience, so since 2007, has been that we've been several quite effective at functioning relatively non-hierarchical collectives, but that is harder. It is harder to function this way in modern society than it is to function in a classical hierarchical delegation of responsibilities and power way. It takes more time and it takes more effort, and it's emotionally draining. I've recently been organizing a lot in this cultural activism sector because we have a right-wing government and things are falling apart. And the expression that just keeps coming to mind is herding cats. It's you know, you have a room of 30 cats and you have to convince them to all sit in one corner and face the same way. It's very hard, if not impossible. Um, and I just recently took the decision, because I'm starting a new project now, to just retreat. I chose to, you know, focus on a small collective of making one performance, and I told all my co-conspirators that I will not be available for conspiracies for a while. Whether it's the right choice to make, I can't say, but it's definitely, for me personally, one of the reasons I enjoy working with theater so much is the fact that creates these temporary communities, which of course some can be very classical and hierarchical, others can be completely democratic or even consensual. Depends on the project, but it's always a unit, not necessarily a family unit, but you know, a collective unit. So.
I agree. It's very difficult and it always seems impossible because, for example, when we were listening to Branko and then Katarina from the Beton Collective, when, you know, the key question, the first question to them was, so how do you resolve conflict? So how do you reach a conclusion? But there is another case because the final answer was that the stage decides. So each decision they make, they can sort of rehearse it or play it. So when you expand the system to, you know, like social problems or political problems, it's not always possible to play them out to see, I mean, you can, but it's very dangerous, of course. So I'm not saying that it's possible, but I think this for me presents the key political dilemma of our time. So how can we transfer some of the things of how to decide together from, you know, really small units to bigger units and keep the, not the consensuality, but kind of keep the process without the current power structures of falling into the pit of creating the same power structures as we already have. So I don't have the answer. I'm only curious.
I think I might. I think they actually skirted the question or didn't really answer it, because well, they did, but not in words. They answered it by disagreeing on the answer. You know, Katerina came down to answer, and she answered quite differently than Branko. And this is actually a very big challenge. We will never all agree on shit. It's impossible, and you will have to measure out what means enough to you to make a stand, and which things you choose to let go to the other. I don't think that the consensual ideal that is being propagandized these days a lot is workable. There's a thing in Slovenia for all the foreigners called Hišni svet. It's like the house council, and it's direct proof that direct democracy has no chance of ever working, at least in these parts. It's a collection of retired homeowners trying to decide something, and it does not function. Sometimes it might on certain topics, but as a general rule, it's a horrible idea.
Well, on the collectives, I would say that temporality, or rather a short span of their duration, is kind of a rule, because the collectives bring together people with very much different motivations. And this is what happened in history all over again. So with time, these motivations change. And if they don't have a common denominator, then these collectives fall apart or just, transform. And this happened to Glay many times. I mean, the generations changed. But the new collectives sort of emerge with the new themes and the new topics. On the other hand, when you say, okay, how can we transform or transpose this collective thinking, collective decision making on a higher level, it is probably the same answer. So it is not that much of a question how we can do it. It is whether do we have a common denominator, a common enemy that will bring us together to that extent that we can be together as a collective, despite the fact that our motivations are completely different. Maybe the COVID is one of those things, and the soft power that Casper was talking about is the solution. But on the other hand, what I noticed with Bunker Limited is that their situation is somehow specific. As Branko said, they were sort of a little bit forced into this collective thing by the outside stimulation, and they all have careers outside. So this is sort of a supplement. This probably takes away
chosen territory.
Yes, it takes away the burden, because what I remember from Pekarna and from Kral's writings, and when I talked to him about how he did it, I think that he had this great responsibility and pressure to organize this collective and to realize this ritual kind of theater. And after 6 years or something, he realized it's not what he wanted to do. So for him, it was too much of a burden. So he just stopped the project.
Probably it's also a sort of dialectic of urgency or the need to.
Yes, it's probably better what Branko said. We have a distance for this. So basically, we do something as a collective, then we move on, we move away from this, and wait till we get the urge to do something. And this, I think, is something that was a recurring theme in all the presentations. Sort of that collectives innovate, invigorate the hegemonic system that we in theater see as the institutional theater, and then again comes to the collective that does another step there, and it never can be completely realized in this institutional frame where the hierarchies are much stronger and persistent.
I would like to rely on what you just said, Gaspar, and perhaps remind everybody that the name of the conference is not Collective Works, but Community Works. And we switched very easily from the point community from that idea to the idea of collective, which we somehow connect to the idea of community. And I think it's not outdated, obviously, that collectives exist, etc., and the word is used, but it's very burdened, but it's overloaded with negative experiences, with the ideal that was never realized, that a community of equals, and that is that I'm not sure is possible to be realized. And I think it's not so difficult to abandon that idea and try to find a more flexible group that is interconnected somehow. Perhaps the idea of community then comes in handy. And it's great that you mentioned Beton Ltd, because I think that's perhaps good, from what I heard from the presentation, because I know nothing about them outside of it. That might be a good example of how a small community might work. The one that is that actually knows some sort of hierarchy, but that hierarchy keeps changing because everybody is an expert in one thing. It's not that everybody are excellent in all the areas and then they share that expertise in the same way equally. It's that they tend to leave certain spheres for those that know better, and then get to exchange each one of them get to occupy that position of power from time to time. And that is also one way of being equal, or at least sustaining community, or if you want collective, for a bit longer than than historical collectives that we all know of.
Can I just add to that, because you were also talking about the notion of bubbles. To me, one bubble is nothing. It's just a bubble. It's not a force. If you put some bubbles together, if you connect the bubbles, you make foam, or you make a cloud, and then something is actually happening. So I connect to what you say, you just said about community building. It's about building a community. And I was also thinking about the tribes or the tribalization. It was, I think, Marshall McLuhan, when he wrote about the world as a global village. In the same article, he wrote about there will be a parallel process going on. The globalization on the one hand and the tribalization on the other hand. And I think what we saw over the last decades was that the tribalization was merely the domain of the right-wing and populist parties. They went back to their small communities and to their tribes, and they cultivated it. But now we are all, let's say, how would I say this? We're almost forced into be inside one bubble, be in, the circle around me, the people I connect to in real life is very small. That's what's happening with us during these COVID period. And the only way to create the force is to connect all the circles, and to connect the bubbles, to connect the tribes, because there is a common denominator in a bubble, in a tribe. But the question is, could you arrange a deal with another bubble where is another common denominator? If you can manage to do so, then you make a force, and then something is happening, and you change the system from the inside out.
Well, for me, I would really like at first maybe think about this like concept of abandoning the power as a concept and relying with this like soft, or being soft, being open, and that goes hand in hand with collective as well as community for me personally, because I feel that collective is just one unit of something that is bigger that could be named community. And feeling this, or like me personally at last month, a year, when we started to try to build a collective or something, like working in more people, and within this collective to open ourselves to communities that we are not part of, let's say the non-Prague realities or something. the main thing it brings me is this like openness and forgetting my own power, how to like, because at first I tried to really be like, let's change all of this, let's be like stiff and the active agents of change. But this is what I've realized, that it's more important to at first just open to the some community's reality and try to feel that it might be mine reality as well, or like mine, something that I don't need to change, but that it's there and it's important to just feel it and ask and somehow be with it. Or yeah, so like this softness and abandoning of power is for me really important concept in community, collective and stuff. So.
Okay.
Hi, I was just thinking about, I mean, you practically posed every possible way to touch this question, but I was thinking about different notions of audiences currently, because what's happening with this COVID and what was mentioned with this intimacy and relation to collective is that the audience that we are forming now is basically isolated and dispersed, which is an audience by definition that is the audience sitting at home inside watching the television. This you cannot compare to to an audience that is collective and uniform in the same space. So even if we have some, I don't know, a common ground, we don't have a, so to say, same conditions. I still have to wear a mask, while you at home now are free to speak without a mask. So even though we are speaking about the same stuff, we don't have the same conditions. So I think that is a starting point from which.
Tía, qué guay. Qué bien.
Can we see you? No.
And the life is going on in each of those homes. And
yeah, so that was what I was trying to say. That if we can, in this type of audience, even talk about the theater.
But it's interesting in a way that the performative space merges with the personal spaces. So it's one and the same space. Also at this moment, well, I'm not at home, but I think others are at home. So there, it's a merge between the professional space and the personal space. But that could also happen with performances. You know, that the performative space is merged with the personal space, and this is, I think, a new challenge for artists, performance artists.
But can you explore the idea a bit further, because you posed yourself a question: is this still theater? And I think in one way, it is, of course, it is theater, but the notion of what is the collectivity in audience when they are totally
I think
kind of atomized, what does it mean?
Yeah, because I mean, we all know the basic definition of theater, which is empty space. So it is the space that is common at the time. And now what we currently have in common is basically the time. So it's changing this whole structure. But I think what we are left with is more like, I mean, me personally, I'm more in favor of this democratical processes of antagonism. So not something common, but the pure fact that we are discussing now. Not sharing maybe the common ground, but trying to establish something from these differences. I don't have the answer, so that was.
Is there anyone, because I'm looking at the venue, is there anyone online that would want to contribute further? Any questions, thoughts, final thoughts? No? Then thank Yeah, sorry.
Can I just add, because there was this question I posed myself, who should start the change, or who should start but who should start providing answers? And I think it's up to us. So it starts here. It's good to pose questions, to raise questions, and to have discussions. But I think it's also important to provide ourselves with answers, because otherwise policymakers will do. And we all know that policymakers are not the ones that should make policies. We should be the ones that make policy, because we know what happens in education, in the theater. We know how a policy could work for us. It could also provide a space and a base to work on. So we need to deliver an answer as soon as possible, because at the moment the policymakers, they don't know how to deal with this situation, so they just try to grab it, take hold of it, and make our spaces even smaller by the day. And I think it's really important to
Slovenia are making policies, you know, besides all the work we do, we are also creating policies, but they are not being heard, implemented, are lost in drawers. Nobody, you know, the government changes. So I think policy making is the task that we already put upon ourselves. But I don't know, at least in our case, it's kind of not working.
And why is it not working? It has to do with the government, this government.
Well, for a policy to be developed, a lot needs to be invested, and it is. I think, like most of us sitting here are involved in policy making, or at least, you know, try to invest into organizations that are sort of kind of sectorial organizations or something. Not sectorial. Sectorial sounds like we have a sect, or well, like for like a theater sector or something. And we develop a lot of policies, not just recommendations, but actual policies, but laws actually, you know, and they're not being implemented, so, or even considered sometimes. So I, in a way, totally agree with you. We shouldn't wait, but.
And could it be that the implementation of laws or policies is connected to the money? No, so if you follow the money that is there, then you eventually end up with policies somebody else made.
Inga will. Just to explain, Inga is the president of Asociacija, which is the cover organization of NGOs and self-employed workers, mainly in the fields of performing arts, but also in the frame of book and other sectors.
And very institutionalized as well, or not?
Yes,
yes, that's true. No, but actually,
maybe that's the problem.
Asociacija started doing it like, and not just Asociacija, but through the all members of organization. We start doing it like 10 or 15 years ago. And then slowly through the years, we are making some progressions or, you know, positive steps, but slowly, and this is really also a tiring way to do it. And all of those things are not directly connected to the money, because, you know, at some point we said, okay, we are constantly asking for the money or doing any kind of changes in the laws or open call mechanisms and stuff. So we decided, not decided, but there is still plenty of the restrictions or things that can be changed, and they're not influencing on the budget, not our budget and our personal or organization budgets, and also not on the budget of the culture in general. But most of them are just not accepted. So they're using them, or maybe taking them as their work just on points where they need it for some particular political reason. So it's not always about the money, and it's not always about waiting somebody else to do something, but it's also about tactics, about who is doing what and who is talking to whom and stuff like this. And I think in general that in Slovenia we were, let's say, successful in this until this super cool change that happened during the COVID, and when we got really right-wing government, which is just cutting off not just the culture, but independent sector in general, and a lot of other things.
I believe I am not mistaken in saying that Kaspar is trying to provoke a little bit here, which is fine. And I agree. Yes, of course, we can make changes, internal changes, and we are making them. We probably could and should be making more. But as you well know, there are structural barriers that need to be overcome, and structural change, it will be very, very hard for it to come from a sector as small as culture. While we are very vocal and very involved in the process, we simply do not have the negotiating power to make, to change the employment laws, which is necessary, which is a structural barrier to a lot of the things that we are trying to accomplish. And we are also actively seeking partnerships with bigger or better represented sectors, but it's a long road, yeah.
Maybe
Yeah, it is.
bring the debate back to back from our everyday pains. Maybe it is in like trans-sector alliances, and it was also mentioned before that collectives came out of urgency to do something together, not necessarily of the same people or the people with the same knowledge and interest.
Quite a few of the talks were about stepping out of these bubbles and then reaching out to local or wider communities.
Yeah. So if there are no last burning remarks or questions, I would ask you to maybe have a closing goodbye.
Okay. This is not me. Thank you, Alma. Thank you, everybody, for being with us the last 2 days. I think that we opened up many topics. We showed that the collective and the question of community, collective ways of doing theater is very pertinent. I'm looking forward to putting together the first issue of Amphitheater Journal in 21 that will sort of wrap it up, all these ideas, and give it even a better picture. And I think that we show that this topic, especially in today, is very urgent, and we need to discuss it in order to get some new ideas how to carry on with theater that is art, that is so much dependent on intimacy, on being live, which is sort of very limited at the moment. Thank you for being with us, and stay well, and enjoy your work in the future. Bye.
Raja Kosya Abdallah.